Reading from the Antya-khaṇḍa of the Caitanya-bhāgavata, text 413. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Dharma karma loka saba mātra jāne. Maṅgala-caṇḍira gīte kare jāgaraṇe. The only religious principle and pious activity that people knew was to sing the glories of Maṅgala-caṇḍi throughout the night. Om jāne-timirandasya jananjana shalakaya aksur-mulatam yena tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Caitanya-mano Vishnam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadama Dadati Sapadantikam Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasade Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So greetings from Sridham Mayapur. Odaryadam, the land of magnanimity. Mercy means you get more than you deserve. So adopting the spiritual path, we certainly want to get more than we deserve. So here where Lord Chaitanya is in Shantipur. Remember, this is after he took sannyas and he's going to settle in Puri, but he goes to Puri and he heads to, and in his travels, he comes back to Shantipur, which is near Navadvip, and he's at the house, that's the house of Advaitacharya, and then he meets Madhavendra Puri, or we see that Madhavendra Puri comes to the house of Advaitacharya about on the appearance day, the Avirbhav Tithi of Madhavendra Puri. And this is Vrindavan Das Thakur, who is now giving a description of the significance of Madhavendra Puri in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. He's described like the root of the branch of the Chaitanya tree. He's the trunk, because somehow or other if we're the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, Madhavendra Puri, in the lineage, I think his guru is Lakshmi Tirtha, and somehow or other, this very deep realization of God, which is the supremacy of Krishna as Akila Rasamrita Murti, as the embodiment of all rasas. I often make the point that the full manifestation, if Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, not just the supreme Godhead, but the supreme personality of Godhead. I'm saying something a little bit unique here, but it seems to make sense. That what a person is their love. They're a friend, a lover, a child, a parent, we are, this is the full manifestation of our being, is our personality. And almost counterintuitively, it doesn't manifest in position or opulence. So the supreme personality of Godhead, by definition, to manifest his intimate side, is not this, doesn't manifest the supreme position of Godhead. Rather, position, these are things that I've said often, position covers personality. So it's a very reasonable explanation of the supremacy of Krishna, or the supreme personality of Godhead, but it's almost counterintuitive. Anyway, it's almost in opposition to the position that we have of God, of his omnipotence, his omniscience, his omnibenevolence, his all-powerful nature. So somehow this real deep realization somehow comes into the line of the lineages, there's 4 Vaishnav lineages, and it comes from Lord Brahma, from Lord Shiva, from Lakshmi, from the 4 Kumaras. It comes in this lineage from Lord Brahma through Madhva, who doesn't really manifest it fully, and then somehow this inspiration comes as Madhavendra Puri. And so what's being described now is the condition of the world at his time, and the condition of his world at his time. What to speak of this intimate relationship of Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam, the original personality of Godhead, the fullest manifestation of Godhead in love, Akila Rasa Mrita Murti, in the full embodiment of all relationships. What to speak of that? There wasn't even a very profound theistic condition. We know what the Bhagavatam means. It's a very, very high conception. Dharma, kaitava, projita, namatsara, paramo namatsaranam satam. It's the purest sense of spirituality or religion, because it indicates no personal motive. I mean, the highest conception of, I think in just a reasonable way, the highest conception we have of spirituality is selflessness. So this is a religious process that is completely selfless. We know even from the last verse of the Caitanya-bhāgavata, which is the Shashastaka prayers, and the last Shashastaka prayer, which really indicates the mood of Sri Radha, who's the exemplar of devotion. And in that chapter, it's actually explained that this verse of the Shashastaka actually comes from Sri Radha's heart, because her Sakhis, her girlfriends, are telling her, like, how can you be with this Krishna? You know, he's such a rascal and he doesn't treat you properly. And so many complaints they make. But what is her heart? Her heart is selfless. Ashlishya va padaritam panastumam madarshanam mamahatam kara. It does not matter. It does not matter. And that's what the purest love means. And the purest love, it's universal, because our conception of God ultimately is really inclusive of everything. Because how do we define that reality in the Bhagavatam? Vedanta tat, tattva vidas, tattva yajnanam advayam. It's jnana means knowledge, but also means consciousness, advayam, non-dual. It means that nothing is really outside of this consciousness. So it's selfless love to really directed at Krishna, but it's inclusive of everything. But as we know, that's a very high platform. And what the Vedas do is it's comprehensive. It's not only giving the spiritual conceptions, but it's a plan to elevate everyone, no matter what their condition of life is. And for many people to take to religion, there has to be some material incentive. And that's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gīte. Sahayagya praja shrishva parova prajapati anena pasavishyatvam eshavo swishtatam. That at the beginning, I sent forth, the demigods, etc., and you perform sacrifice, and you'll be prosperous. There's the principle of sacrifice. That's the beginning of spiritual life. The beginning of spiritual life is that it's not just about you. Nayam lokas to yogyasya kutanya krusa. In the Bhagavad Gīta, it says, Nayam lokas to yakuta. Anyway, Nayam lokas to yogyasya. And I forgot the translation of that. So anyway, so it's describing at the time of at Madhavendra Puri, he was saying the condition of society, that even within religion, whatever sections of the Vedas that gave some incentive for some sacrifice and for some material goal, they had become so prominent that he couldn't find this pure sense of religion, which is Vaishnavism. Really, Vaishnavism means humility, because it begins with the principle that there's something higher than my own desires and opinions. That's how we come to Krishna consciousness. It's not an ordinary thing. We may bring so much of our material motive and baggage in, but what is the adoption of our philosophy? How does it begin? It begins somewhere in this Brahmanda Brahmate Konya Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Pasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Beach. It begins somewhere in this journey with a conception in the consciousness that following my own desires and following my own opinions is not working, because it's not bringing me satisfaction. And that's when someone begins to seek. And what does it mean, seeking? You understand, I want some truth. I want to follow. When you're on a spiritual path, I'm looking for a truth and I don't have it. I'm looking something higher than my own authority, higher than the authority of my desires, the authority of my own conceptions, my speculations, my ideas. And I want to be really honest about them, that they don't work. And there's a conception, I forgot where I read it, that's how spiritual life begins, when God actually sees that. And then he sends some type of sadhu sanga. And when you have that and you come to that, then it's humble. It's really humble. I had a very, what day was it? I'm not sure if it was, what day this is. Yeah, it was after, I'm very fortunate that, I have a schedule and I go to bed early, but somehow Srila Dhanurdhara Swami and Srila Bhakti-Vigyan Swami, they wanted to meet together, not just with me, but among us, to discuss a particular philosophical point. And unlike me, and they were kind of like, I took lunch with them day, and I explained to them, when I wake up in the morning, I don't have family. I have like thousands of disciples. I'm not on any committees. I don't manage anything. I don't have any big aspirations for any preaching programs. So when I wake up in the morning, basically, I don't have any responsibility. And they were like, I just by their, how is that possible? So to actually get a meeting with them, to the time that we can actually get them to be free, it was only in the evening, which is something that I don't do. And I realized I'd be back late. But sometimes you have to make priorities. So the priority of that level of association took precedence over my regulation. And Krishna, actually, I see how he reciprocated with me, because I somehow woke up at the same time, rested anyway, but I didn't get back to very late. So it was a discussion, and they wanted to discuss, anyway, there was one, sometimes there's philosophical contention. So there's one about whether bhakti is inherent or inherited. And Bhakti-Vigyan Goswami, and most of the discussion was not the theological point, but the epistemology. What is the method of actually dealing with these things? And to what extent can you relativize your own immediate charge? It was a very interesting discussion. But the point that Bhakti-Vigyan Goswami made, and it's going to connect to what I say. The point that Bhakti-Vigyan Goswami made is that previously you couldn't even learn. The books were spoken. So you could only learn from a teacher. And there was a qualification for approaching the teacher. But now in the internet and books, and you can study and read whatever you want. But that element of learning from a teacher, and it's somehow doesn't necessarily have to be there, whether it should be or not. But you can read things. So Bhakti-Vigyan Goswami made a very interesting point, and then he liked my commentary on it. And his point was, he said he believed it was from Giriraj Swami, that Giriraj Swami told him that Prabhupada asked him, what is the most important verse that I've quoted? Something like that. And there's many important verses, and I think Giriraj Swami mentioned many of them. I also remember when I was in Dallas and Prabhupada called us in his room and he said, "Will you call yourself teachers? What is the purpose of education?" And someone said, "Manmanabha, 4 things, Manmanabhava Madbhakto," and Prabhupada, it's a great answer, but it wasn't the one that Prabhupada wanted. So, and then someone said 9 things, and then Prabhupada was wondering, That's Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. The 9 process of devotional service mentioned the 7th canto. Prabhupada was wondering, well, where did he get that? Because the 7th canto hadn't come out yet. And I think Prabhupada was just printing it. And I think he was with someone. So then Prabhupada said, Guru na sasyat swajani na sasyat pita. Don't become a guru. Don't be, don't be the head of a government. Don't take, a father, unless you can liberate your charge. So Prabhupada is saying again, what is the most important verse? And I think at different times, Prabhupada asked this question and got different answers. I believe one time he asked it to Brahmananda Prabhu, and I think he said at that time, Janma karma chame divyam yevam yogati, to understand. So, but in the context of our discussion, he quoted that Giriraj Prabhupada said, Yasya deve parabhaktir tata deve tata guru. One who has implicit faith in the spiritual master and the Supreme Lord, the imports of the Vedas are revealed. And emphasizing that this element must be there of faith in Guru and so I remember the commentary that I read, and it had a very interesting take on this, and it said why. And the reason it gave is because the essence of the Vedas, and I've read this many times, it's to help you overcome false ego. And what's false ego? It's the conception that I'm the enjoyer and controller. It's that desire for superiority. That's the material consciousness. We want this, we don't want to be harmonious and cooperative. We want to be centered. And that's the basic material consciousness, and everything is meant to help us transcend that. So the commentary said, it was very interesting, is that sometimes you need a preliminary experience to actually perceive something. And I think an example would be a young girl, a couple of years old, 5 years old, and they show a romance movie, she can't understand what it is because she doesn't have that experience yet. So the idea is, unless one actually surrenders to Guru and Krishna, which is the platform of becoming out of the center and experiencing that, you won't have the lens to see it in the scriptures. And Bhaktivedanta Goswami really liked that point. And I saw that with a personal reference of something, is that there was this very, very learned scholar. He passed away. He was extremely learned, and he had some kind of karma because he was for an Indian, he was very tall and very beautiful person, extremely handsome person. And he just won awards for his scholarship in composing verses. And, he was in the line of Radha and Krishna. But if you see, I saw some videos of him, and it's just, he just doesn't get it. I mean, he just doesn't get it. It's just so much ego and so much cheapness in devotion as he dances like Lord Chaitanya, and all the lady disciples are dancing. It's just like, it's like Prabhupada's like authentic, he's real. And he could just see it, even though he's so learned. So actually, it's a very beautiful temple in Vrindavan, and Satyaraj was visiting, and he said, I want to see this temple. So we went to see the temple. It's very beautifully done. And then Satyaraj said, let's see their bookstore. He likes that. So I walked into the bookstore and I saw they had one book on Guru. But I had read his biography. He never had a guru. So I asked the person, he was in some kind of saffron, who is his guru? And then, he didn't have, something about, he didn't have some kind of guru or something. But I can see the effect that the consciousness can't be expanded beyond your own conditioned frame of reference unless you have a teacher who has a higher realization. And that's our philosophy. And the bhakti philosophy is that there's an absolute truth, an absolute authority, and we should follow that. So it's really a platform of humility because it's really about us, because what we really are is part and parcel of God and meant for his service. It's not about us as the center of the world, but it's really about us. It's truly about us and who we are and how we function and how we become satisfied and how we enter into the platform of harmony and cooperation and self-satisfaction and love. But in one sense, it's a very, very high consciousness, a very high consciousness. And it's the culmination of, as Prabhupada said, the Vedic journey. Vedaischa sarvaham eva vedyo vedanta veda vid. Of all the Vedas, I am to be known. And in one sense, of all the Vedas, we are also to be known, but not as God. We have to be known as the servant of God, the lovers of God. So it's a very, very high consciousness. It's a qualification of consciousness. And humility is the highest platform of consciousness, true humility, which is also prema bhakti, dainya. Dainya in the Bhagavatamrita is described as utter humility. Ashli Shiva Paramritam Panastuman. So here it's describing before Madhavendra Puri, somehow or other these conceptions get sidetracked in society. It can even be sidetracked in the present Vaishnava society, that's what it's about. And it's a very, very beautiful thing. And we all know it. When we see people who have character, which means that they're dedicated to principles, not just their impulses. It's a very beautiful thing when we see people with that level of humility and sacrifice. It's a very, very beautiful thing. But it's a very difficult thing, and we all struggle with it. I also struggle with it. It's tough. It's difficult when the world's not about us and it doesn't move according to our desires. So it's very easy for that to be lost. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says this knowledge was lost for many, many years because we don't hear what we don't like. So now here's the description of the society where it's all basically impersonal and shakta. And both are not about love. But Prabhupada, what do you describe about impersonalism sometimes, like what in the, it's kind of like selfishness in the spiritual sense. Something like that. And Shakta means materialism. So here it's described only the most pious, So it's a description of the society at that time. The only religious principle and pious activity that people knew was to sing the glories of Maṅgala-caṇḍi throughout the night. So it's Durga. Durga is the material energy. And you worship the material energy to get your material powers. So of course, it's worshiping some kind of God, it's making some sacrifice, there are priests, there's some tinge of purification, even though the what you're worshiping for is for yourself, it somehow brings you into I guess what happens when you do some karma-kanda, I mean, you do some religion for some material benefit. So, but something happens. Something happens. What happens? You're associating with priests. A lot of times the benefit is in the future, maybe in the next life. So you get this understand that you're not the body. It doesn't satisfy you, so you can become frustrated with it. And it's administrated sometimes by priests or something, whatever the case is, but this is the condition of society. The only deities they know were Shasti and Vishadi, and the goddess of snakes. They worship these deities with great pride. Some people worship the demons with wine and meat for the purpose of increasing their wealth and family. There are actually provisions for meat eating in the Vedas. For us, they're very challenging sections of the Vedas. And there was some, benefit accrued from it somehow. Everyone was happy to hear the glories. Some people worship the demons. Okay. Everyone was happy to hear the glories of the best of the yogis, the best of the sense enjoyers, and the best of the rulers. Not the best of the devotees. Because Prabhupada says we advance by appreciation. So, and I often quoted Voltaire, maybe I haven't done it for 6 months, but it's one of my favorite quotes. That which we appreciate gradually belongs to us. So your exemplars reveal your desires. So yogis, to become powerful by mystic power to control the world, sense enjoyers, the people who are enjoying the world, and the rulers, the kings. So this is what the people's view was. Just like in America, they have what's called the prosperity gospel. That if you worship God, then you can become very successful. As if that's Jesus's teachings, but somehow you can see how it becomes perverted. My father, somehow or other, I don't know why, but many Jewish immigrants or children of immigrants, they went into the clothing business. So my father had a loft. He was a contractor to make dresses. And he had to rent the loft, and he rented a loft in an old building in Harlem because it was cheap. And this preacher used to come and ask for donations. And he was popular in Harlem at the time. And his name was Reverend Sam the Money Man. And this was so you can understand it's people are generally, material world means narcissistic. Narcissistic means to see the world through your own desires. So you see what's right in terms of what is best for you. And that reflects in religion. And somehow or other, so you see what happens here. So only the most pious persons recite the names of Pundarikaksha and Govinda at the time of taking bath. So the extent of Vaishnavism was just a cultural thing, some prayers when people are taking bath, there were some mantras like that. By the influence of Vishnu's illusory energy, people did not know who was a Vaishnava, what was Sankirtan, or what was dancing and crying for Krishna. The entire world was entangled in the mode of ignorance. Loka deki dukkha bhave simara madhavapuri henanahi tiladrida sambasa yare kare. Sri Madhavendra Puri became distressed on seeing the condition of the people. He did not find anyone fit to converse with. So this is he was deke dukkha bhave, he was sad, but loka deke, when he saw the people, then dukkha bhave, he became distressed because Hena Nahi, he did not find anybody, Sambhasa Kare, to talk with, to converse with. I know the Lakshmi Moni's there, that's why you like to come to the Dham. There, I'm living in Gornaga. I'll get to the temple eventually. But when I go once or twice a week to visit Srila Dhanurdhara Swami, it's in a place called Rasamrita Kunj. And it's a 30-minute walk minimum. And somehow or other, I like to walk. It's people, when you drive a car, you think it's like hours by walking, but it's 30 minutes by walking. And generally, I'm in my room and go to someone's house. That's the way I am. But when I walk, it's you know how these people, they in Bengal, if someone's driving in the Mayapur, if someone's driving a motorbike or a bicycle, they don't go past you. If you're a sannyasi, they stop and get off the bike and pay the obeisances. And then, so when I walk there, it's just so nice. People stop you and say, I heard your class, I read your book. You don't even know the people. And it's just nice. And one very nice devotee came to see me today, and his wife, I forgot his wife's name, Kontia. We talked for 2 hours on Guru Tattva. It's so nice. So conversing, but he didn't find anyone. And he was distressed on seeing the condition of the people. Sanyasira saneva karena shambhasana se apanare mātra bale nara. When he tried to speak with a sannyasi, the sannyasi would claim to be Narayan. That's the idea. Sannyasis realize he thinks he's God. A dukkha sannyasi shange na kahina katahena. Because of this unhappy situation, he would not speak with sannyasis. He could not find any place where devotional service to Krishna was discussed. So this was his lamentation. He couldn't find any situation. Jnani yoga tapasvi sannyasi khyatiyara. Even those renowned as jnanis, yogis, ascetics, and sannyasis never spoke about the glories of service to the Lord. So there was a guise of spirituality, yogis, jnanis, etc. But it's just I think we should just think it's a very, very special thing. Whether we're qualified or not qualified, we've come to this path of selfless love. That the goal of our process, dukkhalayam, what's that? Susukam kartam avyam, it's joyfully performed. And I made this point many, many times. Whatever process you have, any other process besides bhakti, the goal, any other process besides bhakti, the pleasure is the goal and not the activity. Karma is not pleasurable. So many rituals, etc. The fruit is what you're going for. And similarly with Gyan, the mukti is pleasurable, not the austerities, etc. But in the path of bhakti, what's pleasurable is the activity. And if you're doing something where the pleasure is not the activity, but the goal, it's no longer bhakti. Bhakti is not done for anything, for yourself. That's the very definition of bhakti. It's not done for anything. It's sincere. It has no personal hoitaki. It's without any cause outside of itself. So the spiritualists that are mentioned, jāne has a goal, personal goal. Ascetics have a personal goal. And even the best ones, the yogis, had a personal goal. But the sannyasis, but the bhaktas, nadanam, najanam, nasundarim, kavitam va, jagadisha kame, mama janmani, janmani ishvari, bhavata bhakti hoit. I don't want anything. I only want devotional service. I don't even want liberation. So he wants those type of people. And even in the association of devotees, those are the people we want that have no personal motive. It's such a beautiful thing. Anya bila shita shunyam jnana karma dhyanabritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhakta uttama. Uttama bhakti. Anya bilasha, without any other consideration. Anukulyena krishnanu shilanam. Our activities are to please God, Krishna, and they follow his will in disciplic succession. And that's our faith. Our faith is that this is the highest pleasure. This is the best thing. So he couldn't find anyone. All the teachers simply taught dry argument. They did not accept that Krishna has a form. So whatever it is, they didn't have sambandha gyan because they didn't understand the relationship between the soul and God. They thought that the soul was God, and they thought the form of Krishna was material. And they thought that they were the enjoyers. So they didn't have real, true metaphysical knowledge. On seeing, gīte shunite, gīte seeing, shunite hearing, dukkha hishre madhava puri, mane chinte vane vase gīya kare. On seeing and hearing such things, Madhavendra Puri became unhappy. He considered going to reside in the forest. When I was with Niranjan Swami, one day he invited me for lunch. And those Russian bakers, I didn't eat like a sannyasi, but I made this statement afterwards. I've lost my caste, but I'm not hungry. I made that sacrifice, but afterwards I was talking with Dhanurdhara Swami and I was saying just how screwy the world is on all levels, inside and out. It's just so disappointing. Relationships disappointing. Everything's disappointing. And then I said, because of that, when you get old, it's easier to like become a little bit more detached because, it's the end game. But not in a bad, but I'm saying it's almost relief. Okay, I get rid of all of this. So he was saying that's the danger, is the desire for liberation. You want peace. So I was talking in that way, and I'm a very optimistic person. People know me, so it's not like really depressed, but it was kind of some realization. It's just crazy. Everything becomes crazy. There's no sense in anything, and it seeps into everything. And after a while, you say, boy, it'd be a relief not to have to do this anymore. And so I said, how do you deal with it? And he just said, well, what his realization is, I thought it was a nice realization. I just think that all this craziness and all the anger and the insults and the fear and and all the emotions, they're just a reflection of the spiritual world. Because then he started to quote, he was reading something of Krishna Lila. He's reading something of Krishna Lila or something, and the coward boys and all the emotions, and they get angry with Krishna, and Krishna gets angry with them, and so all these emotions are there in the spiritual world. And I understand it's just a reflection of that. And then he was describing how, that was the main realization. But you can see why you want to go to the forest, why you want to just leave it all, if you're qualified. All the insanity, crazy insanity, external, internal, go to the forest, chuck it all in. So even Madhavendra Puri, seeing the insanity, and a mata mana dukkha bhavite chin. While he was unhappily contemplating in this way by the will of the Supreme Lord, he met Advaita. Now I remember, I think Advaita they're revealing the story how he met Madhavendra Puri. So Vishnu Bhakti Shunya Deke Sakala Samsara. Vishnu Bhakti, zero bhakti. He was seeing Sakala Samsara, and everybody was in samsara. So this is Advaita's looking at the world. He's a devotee. Advaita Charya Dukkha Bhavena, and he was greatly unhappy to see the world devoid of devotional service to Vishnu. So this was Madhavendra Puri's mood, and this was Advaita Charya's mood. Still, by the mercy of Krishna, the lion-like Advaita always preached the devotional service of Krishna with firm determination. So while Madhavendra Puri was feeling this, somehow Advaita Acharya says lion-like, so powerful, he was just preaching this. And there's something attractive about someone who's ready to die for the truth. Someone who's really committed to the truth. And people don't like to hear the truth because the truth doesn't conform to people's desires. And there's a connection between what you believe and what your desires are. And generally, the connection is that if you want to enjoy, there has to be two factors: the sensual, egotistical experience, and to fully appreciate that, you have to have a worldview or a justification of it. Because you don't have a justification of it, then the guilt ruins it. So when someone tells the truth, they're not only attacking a person's conceptions, they're ruining their enjoyment. And therefore, people resist that. And therefore, you have to be very lion-like. Of course, you have to be communicative, etc. But you have to be, because it's not always going to be appreciated. And you're not going to be appreciated always, especially if you boldly go out into the place where it's materialistic. So this was Advaita Acharya. He was the Acharya. This was Prabhupada. I love when Prabhupada's in the garden with those philosophy professors. He said, Krishna is God. Why won't you accept? So he constantly taught Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. He taught that devotional service was the purport of these two literatures. So the world is not about you. At that time, Madhavendra Mahasaya arrived at the house of Advaita. As soon as Advaita saw the signs of a Vaishnava in Madhavendra Puri, Advaita offered him obeisances. And Madhavendra Puri embraced Advaita and soaked his body with tears of ecstatic love. They both became so absorbed in discussing topics of Krishna consciousness between themselves that they forgot about their bodies. The ecstatic love of Madhavendra Puri is beyond description. He would lose consciousness upon seeing a cloud. As soon as he heard the name of Krishna, he would roar loudly, and in one moment, thousands of transformations of ecstatic love of Krishna would manifest in his body. Advaita Mahasaya was most pleased to see the manifestation of devotional service to Vishnu and Madhavendra Puri. Advaita then took instructions from him. This is how Madhavendra and Advaita met. Since then, Advaita joyfully celebrated Madhavendra appearance every day. By divine arrangement, that auspicious day arrived, and Advaita happily began to make arrangements for the occasion. Sri Gaurasunda and his associates all felt great happiness on that auspicious day. There's no end to the arrangements made by Advaita Gosai to celebrate that occasion. And then that's going to be described. Okay. Jamunajaya usually started off, if you're there, by giving us one thing that you appreciate, and then others may be inspired.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for a wonderful class. I had many things of inspiration, but I was really struck by the way you defined what a person of character is, because we say a person has character, and you really put it there. The person with character is someone that's committed to some authority higher than their own desires. And I thought that just really made it clear, because we talk about wanting character, but what is it? It's being committed to not just your own whims. Right?
Yeah, to principles authority, rather than impulses and opinion, and Yeah, thank you, Jumadajaya. Haribol.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
Anybody else like to share any reflection? Okay, a few people can say hello.
Okay, Krishna Maharaj, do you have question time?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to see if I got your analogy straight when you're talking about the fact that, in order to understand the real meaning of Shastra, right, you have to have faith in and surrender to a guru. And so I think the analogy that you used was of a young girl, right? Let's say, maybe an 8-year-old, right? She can't understand romance because she doesn't have any experience of it. So that young girl would be like a person who does not have faith in or has surrendered to a guru, and
Who
therefore
doesn't have the experience of giving up false ego because they don't accept a truth higher than their own opinions and desires. So therefore, they have a hard time seeing that in the Shastra. That's the point.
okay, that's a little clearer. Okay, and then just one last thing, Maharaj. You were saying that, in times long ago, people used to learn from hearing from their teachers because there weren't even any books around. So if today, if I were to say, I'm just going to hear from those who have realization of the books, why would that not be enough?
Well, it would do well. It depends if you accept their authority or not. Otherwise, you'll just filter everything through your own conditioning.
Yeah, so I think obviously you would only be hearing from people who you have faith in. So
Right.
But then that be enough? Because there's so much stress. I don't have a problem reading Prabhupada's books, but there's so much stress on that, So I'm just wondering how to see this in perspective.
Well, see it in the basis of Bhagavatam. Why was the Bhagavatam spoken at the beginning, right? What is it? It's Sutta to Shonaka Rishi. I'm explaining to you because you're a gentle and submissive disciple. That's why he's explaining it to him. Because otherwise, yeah, right? That's how the Bhagavatam begins.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then that's really the principle, to hear from a higher authority.
Right, with some faith.
Yeah.
With some faith.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Maharaj.
Just thinking, Maharaj, excuse me, I don't have much of a voice.
Yeah.
Forgive me. But I was thinking that when we first met Srila Prabhupada, there was no Lowe Bazaar and there was no Bihari Lal. And the only books, there was no internet either and no cell phones. And, people don't realize how different the world was then when we met Prabhupada because there were no computers. And there was no internet, and we only had the books that Prabhupada gave us. So it reminded me of what you said, that before transmission was only verbal, you could only hear it from your spiritual master. And what we were hearing was only possible to hear from Srila Prabhupada. There was no competition really that was worthy of even considering. And now it's complicated, and it really tests your faith to be able to just listen to, and if you read Prabhupada's books first, then it provides the foundation with which to judge everything else that you read. But otherwise, you have no business, you have no ability, you have no, frame of reference to make a decision.
Right. And also how you're hearing.
Mm.
You're not just hearing, you're hearing with like this faith, which enables you to assimilate things beyond your limited frame of reference, right? Because normally if you don't have faith, you say, well, I don't believe that. I don't accept that. I don't believe that. But we accepted and we had faith. And it's powerful because despite our desire not to want pure devotional service, we had to hear it.
I remember in Buffalo, one devotee found a copy of Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, written by one of Prabhupada's godbrothers. And he asked Prabhupada if he could read it, if it was bona fide. And Prabhupada said, it's 95% bona fide, but you're not intelligent enough to figure out the other 5%, so don't read it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's Thank you. Okay.
Can I just clarify that my question was in relationship to those who are explaining Prabhupada's books?
Yeah, well, if you have faith in them, it's powerful, of course. That's called Guru Parampara. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else like to say hello?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, this is Hemala Tarada.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Haribo Maharaj. Sorry, we have no camera, but your class was really wonderful, Maharaj. And we both actually thought about talking to you about we advance by appreciation.
Yeah, such a nice point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Haribo. Would someone else say hello?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much for the class.
Haribo, nice to see you.
Thank you very much. We are looking forward to come and see you, Maharaj.
I'm hoping it'll work out. It's pretty good here in India. I mean, it's I don't know, they have some kind of herd immunity so far, so that's pretty good.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Anybody, I'd love to see you. So, okay. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, Tota Gopinath here.
And Kishori Radha.
And
Not today.
that's great. Okay, good. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Welcome, Vinda.
And Raja, thank you
Thank you for class.
Nice place you got always. I could see. I could feel the presence of your deities.
Thank you.
Can we really come back?
Yeah. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, it's Amala.
Amala, you look like you're ready to just chuck in Albany and the whole thing and just retire to Govardhan.
I'm ready. My mind is already retired to Govardhan, just waiting for my body to catch up.
I can see it now. I can see it. You're at the end of material life now. I can see it. Okay.
Thank you. See you soon.
Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Sri Rupa, so nice to see you.
Sri Rupa, Haribo. Remember you were here last year at this time, right? Yeah. Okay, good. I saw those nice pictures when you all went to Bhakti Bandhav. That's so nice. Good.
Yeah, it was such a
Any-
nice time.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. Anybody
And-
else? Go ahead. What are you saying?
And we went again in December, and we're going to go again in January. We're trying to make it a monthly thing.
I think it's great. When I come back from, I'm trying to go to Moscow, I'll only be 1 week in America before I go almost to a month to Colombia. But I'm going to see if that weekend I can do the thing at Bhakti Bandhav. That would be really nice. Good. I'm so happy you're going there. It's nice to have to look forward to go to a spiritual place with nice devotees and, you know.
It's
Great.
so enlivening. Thank you, Maharaj.
Good. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for a wonderful class.
Henry, great to see you. Great to see you.
Maharaj, you just steer. I'm trying to wait for Henry and then say, all right, well.
Okay, great. Nice to see you this year, Haribol. Good. Good. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Haribo, Kinchina. Okay, Kinchina. Haribo. And someone else there said hello, Hare Krishna.
Yes,
How
this
do
is Kenya.
How do I pronounce your name? Shinia? No?
Kenya.
Okay, great to see you. And I'll see you in, probably see you in Govardhan, right?
Yes, I will be in Vrindavan on the 30th of January.
Okay, January 1st. Good. That's so nice. Great. Thank you so much for coming. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to head out. We'll see everybody else over. Okay. Haribol. Vanchakalpatarubhishak.